All right, what's going on, everybody? This is I guess you could say, a special edition live stream that's on my channel this evening. I haven't. It's been a while since I've done an evening live stream on my channel. Because usually I do them on Sunday afternoons. The anti NFL show. So this is very different. But I actually hinted towards this toward the end of my live stream yesterday that I was going to have a special guest. I didn't mention who it was, and I left it anonymous like that for a reason, because I wanted to make sure everything was still going to go through. But I did leave, once I had the confirmation, I did leave it as a post on my community tab of who I was going to have on here this evening. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves just in case some of you are not familiar with them, because I've actually mentioned him on my channel before, but this is my first time actually collabing with him on my channel. Hopefully it's not the last, and I'm almost sure it won't be. But Cerulean, I'm gonna let you go ahead and let the people know who you are and what you do.
Well, greetings, esteemed family. I'm Cerulean Gray, um, community organizer, volunteer, uh, former veteran of the U.S. Navy, um, and a social scientist. I don't have the initials behind my name because I still owe $30,000 before I could get that. Um, and basically, I'm kind of new to the entire YouTube atmosphere. One of the newer YouTubers. My channel focuses on education, organization through volunteerism, um, i- disseminating information that is relevant to Black life, um, like the topic we're going to be discussing tonight, as far as the 2019 fiscal year budget.
Yeah, like I actually met Cerulean through Angry Man through the Discord. I guess you could say the Discord, or through his channel as a whole. And I said, this man right here really knows his stuff. And I was like, whenever I sit there and listen to him speak about anything, it's like I'm a sponge, and I'm just like literally trying to absorb everything that he puts out there. And even then I still have to come back with more questions. And I'm gonna tell y'all, by the end of this live stream, y'all gonna be blown away by this information. It's a reason why I wanted to keep this separate from my regular live stream, because one, my live stream yesterday had to be short because I had to end up going to work, and I knew I couldn't cover everything in this one setting. So I said, let me go ahead and do a separate one and collab with Cerulean, because I know that this was his level of expertise. So you're probably going to hear more of him talking than myself tonight. Of course, I'm going to interject where I feel I need to on certain parts of what we're going to discuss. But he read this entire document. This entire 2019 fiscal budget document is 160 pages long, and he read the entire document. As a matter of fact, before I had pushed the button to get started, he told me he had the document sitting right in front of him, like right on the screen. I said, "Oh, he's ready." So I hope y'all are ready, because this is going to be very, very interesting.
Well, yeah, I made sure I actually kept it open. Pertinent documents like this, I used to have like right there on my desktop, so I always keep it for reference. It's a really short document, shorter than most fiscal year budgets. Um, uh, in fact, the other budget I showed you, that was actually a, a collection of summarized budgets from 2002 to 2018, kind of like a overview of
Mhm.
where America's basically been spending the majority of its GDP. Um, this year's budget, um, as seemingly diverse as it is, focuses on a few things. Um, one is one of the key topics is modernizing government for the 21st century, which means streamlining government. A whole host of federal cuts that are happening, which means government jobs going away. In fact, if you know about the recent headlines of the UPS warned shippers to brace for a possible freight strike. That actually came to me by way of one of my esteemed paladins of the gray regime, Adrian Thomas, who sent me that article. This thing is ramping up, and they're ramping this thing up before the 2019 fiscal year actually begins. Okay, which is actually it begins at the end of November. Um, but the policies will go into effect January 1st to January 2nd. Um, so the most pronounced uh, thing that is happening in the 2019 fiscal year budget, we have to skip to page 49, which is the Department of Health and Human Services. Um, and this is the one of the most pronounced line items in the budget. Says combats the opioid epidemic.
And that was the
Uh,
part that got, and that was the part that raised my antennas when you mentioned that, because that's like one of my favorite topics of discussion, and that's something that a lot of my subscribers like to hear me talk about as well. So for those of y'all who are in the chat right now, I hope y'all are paying close attention to what is about to be read.
okay, combats the opioid epidemic. The budget significantly strengthens efforts to combat the opioid epidemic by including $5 billion in new resources over the next 5 years, which is significant. Approximately 64,000 people died in 2016 as a result of drug overdoses, the largest increase in drug deaths ever recorded in a single year in the United States. That includes this so-called phenomena of black on black violence. This includes the so-called phenomena of drunken drivers. This includes the phenomena of gun violence. More people died of opioid epidemic, uh, actually by more than 5 times the number of deaths within the last 3 years in the United States, happening in a single year over the year of 2016, with 64,000. Um, Deaths from drug overdoses have almost been doubled in the last 10 years. And a drug overdose is a leading cause of unintentional injuries or deaths for Americans under the age of 50. They're saying Americans under the age of 50, but it really, they're really saying white people.
Of course.
Um, a major driver of this crisis in opioids is a class of drugs that includes both legal and illicit drugs, such as a certain prescription painkillers, heroin, and synthetic opioids such as fentanyl. The budget builds up upon the administration's continued efforts. In 2017, the administration declared a nationwide public health emergency and provided nearly $500 million to the states to prevent and treat opioid abuse and addiction. In addition, the 2018 budget requested another 500 million. The budget requests $1 billion in new resources for 2019 and a total of $5 billion over the next 5 years to combat the opioid epidemic by preventing abuse and helping those who are addicted currently get access to overdose reversal drugs, treatment, and recovery support services. So, this is $5 billion in new facilities to pay the payrolls for doctors, to pay the payroll for counselors, nurses, CNAs, and what have you. So this is $5 billion, which includes a payroll for people who are going to manage this program, and facilities, brand new facilities. They're not taking any old facilities and revamping them or renovating them or any of that. These are $5 billion in new facilities and people. And not only that, but to train new counselors, which is also part of that. Um, Now, you know that fentanyl and the opioid epidemic disproportionately affects basically whites. More whites have overdosed on fentanyl than died as far as black people over the entire course of the crack epidemic. In fact, the number of fatalities as a result of the opioid crisis just within the last couple of years, just in 2016 alone, is higher Get this number by more than 15 times the number of fatalities as a result of the crack epidemic. And so what they're doing right now is they're trying to clean up. They're trying to clean up the basically the opioid junkies. And I actually mentioned this Friday night on our esteemed brethren Antonio Moore on his show. I basically mentioned that I had a projection that there is likely going to be for the 2020 fiscal year budget. There's going to be a federal jobs guarantee, which are mostly going to go to white males. Um, and that's interesting because we go back to let's talk about the modernizing government for the 20th century on page 7. Um, it says where we are, federal context, when America's founders established the Constitution, he laid out a clear mission, blah, 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 uh, for from providing for the common defense to securing the blessings of liberty. To this day, the business of government remains to serve the American people, which is a bunch of bullshit, as we know, by meeting their expectations in the foundational mission areas. Um, now, there's a question that says how we got here, the root cause and challenges of effects. Many federal government challenges and shortcomings arise from practices designed in the past and trends that can no longer be sustained. Major root cause challenges facing the federal government include accumulated regulatory burden, structural issues, decision making processes, leadership and culture, capabilities and competencies. Um, Now they've known this for a while, but there's another question that says where we're headed, a multi generational vision for reform, and I want you to keep that in mind. Multi generational vision for reform. So this is the way when I talk about what black people need to be doing is how we need to take a multi generational mission based approach, right? This is how white people plan. This is how the world plans when it comes to government. They always plan generations ahead. That's one of the line items. It says the vision for reform must be multi generational, enabling the federal government to continue adapting to changes needed over time. The administration cannot pursue short term fixes only to see government quickly become once again outdated. Deep stated transformation takes time and will not happen in 1 or 2 years. In March, the administration will announce the president's management agenda, which will set forth a long term vision for an effective government that works on behalf of the American people. Supposedly, we'll put an asterisk next to that. The mission is the American people count on the federal government every day, from national security to infrastructure to food and water supply. The public servants must be accountable for mission driven results and have the necessary tools to deliver. In service, federal customers range from small businesses seeking loans to families receiving disaster support to veterans owed proper benefits and medical care. They deserve a customer experience that compares to or exceeds that of the leading private organizations. Um, Modern information and technology will function as the backbone. Modern information and technology will function as the backbone of how government serves the public in ways that meet their expectations and keep sensitive data and systems secure. Now, understand when they say modern information and technology, they are talking about automation. They are talking about automation. So this is really a self-serving pig that is going to make more concessions for the corporate arm to bring more automation into your locales. So you're going to see more self checkouts at even smaller stores. You're going to see warehouse jobs being lost, as going to be replaced with these warehouse bots, which they're giving subsidies for. This is what they mean by modern information and technology functioning as the backbone of how government works. They're preparing for AI to take over financing jobs. accounting jobs, all of those jobs that currently have real flesh and blood people working are gonna be gone. This is in the budget. This is not me reading from a sci-fi manual. This is in a budget. This is in the 2019 budget. This is what they're preparing for. That's why when I emailed our esteemed colleague BGS, I told him I don't know if we're going to make it to 2025. We're still talking about a gender war that's not really happening because it's really always been a race war. And here you have the 2019 fiscal year budget that is telling you quite directly that it is replacing people with technology. And that is going to be the backbone of how the government is going to work. This is the budget. This is nothing else. I'm not reading from a sci-fi manual. This is not 1984, and this is not a Brave New World. This is the 2019 fiscal year budget that I'm reading from. Okay, they're going to give more subsidies for automotive industry to produce self-driving cars. This is what they're talking about. This is on page 12 of the budget. Okay, that's on page 12. So when they're talking about technology and information, modern technology and information being the backbone of this new streamlined government, what they're talking about is cutting government jobs in the areas specifically of like finance, accounting. All of those are going to be AI driven programs. You see, payroll. If you receive a government check, all of that stuff is going to be managed by machines. This is in the budget. So, in the name of this is modernizing government for the 21st century. That is page 11. Page 12, it tells you exactly how they're going to do that. Um, One of the line items, a modern workforce will enable senior leaders and frontline managers to align staff skills with evolving mission needs. This will require more nimble, quote unquote, nimble and agile management of the workforce, including reskilling and redeploying existing workers to keep pace with an environment of change. What they're really saying is that they're going to have, as they phase people out, they're gonna be cross training people that are already in those jobs. They're going to be cross training these people until they eventually phase them out in order to save money, and that's how they're going to streamline the workforce. So there's no jobs coming back whatsoever. Anyone that's telling you that Trump is bringing back jobs, no. This budget has already been decided on. These changes take effect January 2nd.
So
Okay.
so right now, right now, we just giving you a heads up. That way, it doesn't come by surprise. So that way, when it happens, you're like, we found out about this on what's today's date, November 5th, 2018.
Oh yes. Another line item: modernizing information technology (IT) to increase productivity and basically cybersecurity. Um, Although the federal government roughly spends $90 billion currently annually on IT, these systems remain outdated and poorly protected. The administration will increase the use of modern technologies, retire highly insecure and outdated systems, and direct modernization costs savings to mission driven outcomes. The administration will improve its ability to identify and combat cybersecurity risks to agencies, data systems, and networks, creating a 21st century framework for data that drives efficiency and accountability and transparency. The government needs a robust, integrated approach to using data to deliver on mission, serve customers, and deliver, and steward resources. So, what they're talking about is basically cutting down the number of workers. Um, and they can do that by basically focusing on getting all of these new machines, all of this new technology, phasing out people who basically manage the current programs. So if you're looking for a job in this oncoming uh, change, you might want to start getting your IT game up and try and try to focus on like cybersecurity and whatnot, because that's where a good majority of the jobs are going to be is in cybersecurity. Those are the people that are going to manage um, online, these systems that are integrated into the self-driving network. Okay, that's what I was talking about with they're trying to clean up the opioid junkies now so that you don't have more white supremacist terrorists on the loose, because there's nothing more dangerous than a white man who just lost all of his jobs, all of his benefits, retirement, and all of that, and he's got a gun in one hand and the Bible in the other, and realizing his situation is dire, instead of going on a rampage.
And possibly a bomb on his chest.
Yeah, and possibly a bomb on his chest, right? And so what he does is realizing that ultimately that terrorist act is really not going to accomplish much. He ends up shooting himself in the arm, with a needle full of highly concentrated fentanyl. And so they're trying to prevent that, pacify white males, and then put them, clean them up in these new resources that they're going to build for the opioid crisis. And then the next year, and prepare for this, the 2020 budget is going to prepare them and retrain them into these IT, cybersecurity, and all of that. And that's going to be under a federal jobs guarantee. Um, there's a line item here for reorganization and reform, where it talks about last March when the president sent out a call for change with the Executive Order 13781, comprehensive plan for reorganizing the executive branch, where he tasked the Office of Management and Budget with providing a plan to reorganize the executive branch. So basically, it's basically allowing the president to have more power, almost like an Emperor Palpatine style
Oh, oh,
rulership. See,
oh.
they try to do this with Obama, right? They try to say Obama was like Emperor Palpatine, but no, Trump is the Emperor Palpatine
Mm,
right now. And with this, he is really securing his reelection for presidency. Okay,
mm,
with with Executive Order 13781 and Executive Order 13771, he is literally solidifying his reelection. Um, and so now what's happening is you have all of these opioid junkies that are running around that are basically being troublemakers, because you just what you just had up in Utah with them marching on the government building, right?
mhm,
And so there is no federal jobs guarantee for them. Now they're looking like this is the prelude to all federal jobs guarantees. If you look at every federal job guarantee program that has ever happened in the United States, we can go all the way back to the New Deal. It has always been met with you know insurrection. You know, has always been met with insurrection, and then after the insurrection, basically comes, uh, you know, the reorganization process. And that's the reason why you had FDR saying that there's going to be a chicken in every pot, so forth. And this is basically the chicken in every pot with the black folks being locked out.
oh, to be white in this establishment, you can squander everything, get high, lose it all, and then possibly get cleaned up and then get a job that is just like designated for you.
Yeah, the least significant part of this budget. Now you had a bunch of like um, sit-ins and what you call empty suits.
Mhm,
Heads of HBCU. We could go down to the page 38, the education budget, Department of Education, which is getting more slender and slender and slender. Um, they're trying to privatize education. This is the reason why my position is that we as black people, we literally can train our own kids. America's at a point right now where it can't afford to really spend a whole lot of money. So what it's doing is taking away from other programs, cutting jobs in government, which it must do. It was inevitable that was going to happen anyway. And who's the first jobs that are going to go? Of course, jobs that are occupied by blacks. This is the reason why I advocate for blacks to join the military, um, because 100,000 black males join the military every year. You get into a field one where the military is the top STEM trainer, the top STEM provider, the top trades training program is in the military. The military this fiscal year is getting the largest part of the budget that has ever gotten in the history of the prison or the military industrial complex. $2.4 trillion is going to go to the military just next year alone. And
I've
that
told
and
I've told people that the STEM department is like one of the biggest funded departments in any college campus.
so you have for the education budget, one of its line items: provide high quality special education services to children with disabilities, empowering families to choose the schools that are best for their children. Um, Supports implementation of here's the other subsidy in the education budget. You're going to see this theme all throughout the budget. Supports implementation of school-based opioid abuse prevention
Here
strategies.
we go. Uh,
That's actually a part of the budget. That's a common theme throughout this budget.
and it's funny you
It-
mentioned that too because like I had just did a video on my channel talking about how they are going to put Narcan in libraries and YMCA's across the establishment, a place that has kids frequent every day.
oh yeah.
And like
Uh,
they are literally trying to save people that are literally hanging on by a thread.
I want you to check this out, right? So, the opioid crisis has devastated families across the United States and strained the capacity of schools and affected communities to meet the academic and mental health needs of their students. To address these issues, the budget invests $43 million for school climate transformation grants to help school districts implement multi tiered evidence based strategies to prevent opioid misuse and address associated behavioral and academic challenges through interventions such as trauma counseling, violence prevention, and targeted academic support. This funding would also support technical assistance centers that develop and provide opioid abuse preventions and treatment resources that would be publicly available to all schools and institutions of higher education. Now, when we go back to the opioid, combating the opioid and the DHHR part of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
This is what this is for. What this tells you is that one, you have white kids right now that are into the opioid shit, right? And not only that, but you have those kids who've had a parent that is addicted to some kind of an opioid. So they're addressing the opioid crisis on every single level, every single sphere of human activity. Do they address the opioid crisis?
Mm-hmm.
This has never been happened. This has never happened in the history of America. It didn't happen during the heroin crisis. It didn't happen during the crack epidemic. And now it is happening. Man, it's only happening because it disproportionately affects whites.
And at a very, very, very high rate. Like you said, it like they said this because I don't call it a crisis because that means I would actually have to care and I don't. But they said that this opioid plague has killed more people than gun violence. I think maybe I think car accidents. You said even told me that this thing has taken out more people than in a few wars.
Yeah, there's uh the four times as many people that died in Vietnam, as far as soldiers go. Um, it's killed three times as many people as gun violence, uh, drunk driving accidents, so-called incidents of black on black violence. Chicago, there's more people that that overdosed on opioids than all of those combined, and you can multiply that three times over, and you still have a, a, a surplus of people that have basically fatalities as a result of opioid or fentanyl overdose.
Mm.
Um, Interesting thing, they're trying to privatize the education. So right now, black folk, like, this is the time for us to get into charter schools, because they're
Or homeschooling.
yeah, homeschooling, more online based education for kids. This is opening up. This is a time for us to get organized to really do that. One of the ways you could do that, look, if you have extra space, stay in your home. It doesn't even have to be a school per se. You can have it community based, where you have say online school, and you have all of the kids around in your neighborhood. If you got extra space, like here soon, I'm actually going to be transforming my theater room into a classroom. Um, for my great nephews and my nephews and nieces' kids, I'm actually going to be transforming my theater room into a classroom. And so and so this is the time for us to take advantage of these things. This is about taking control of the manufacturing process. This is the one silver lining, really, in this entire budget, is that you actually are going to have more freedom with the education of your children. The budget invests $1.1 billion in school choice programs, which actually makes a subsidy for those who choose online education. Uh, Flipboard classes online, those type of things. So it invests $1.1 billion in school choice programs to expand the range of high quality public and private school options for students, putting more decision making power in the hands of parents and families. This investment serves as a down payment toward achieving the so-called president's goal of an annual federal investment of $20 billion. So this is the most money the government has actually put into education in any period of time in history. Okay. This is more money that has ever been put into education in any period of time in history. I want you to remember that. Ever since the American public schools uh, have been desegregated, they have been basically defunded. And this has been happening for the last 60 years since they were desegregated. Since Title IX, which is the rapid defunding of public education, most of your public which is why most of your public schools are in the poor condition or even shutting down, is a result of Title IX. Like what you're seeing now, 30, 40 years later, is a result of Title IX, 4 decades ago. And so now this is actually revitalizing of education, which basically puts the power back into the hands of the parents. $20 billion is more money than they have put into education in the last 4 decades. Um, and this is for a total of an estimated $100 billion, when including matching school choice grant programs to support a wide range of innovative approaches to school choices, which they're not only adding um, grants for people who want to open charter schools, but people who want to run like flip classes, digital education, those type of things. This budget requests $500 million to establish a new school choice grant program to support a wide range of innovative approaches to school choice. These include expanding existing private school choice programs to serve more low income and at risk students, developing new private school choice models for supporting school districts' efforts to adopt student based budgeting and open enrollment policies that enable federal, state, and local funding to follow the student to the public school of his or her choice. So they're getting rid of districting, right? They're getting rid of the district restrictions and regulations. This is coming down the pike. In addition, states and districts would request $500 million to fund the opening, expansion, and replication of high quality public charter schools and financing of charter school facilities. The budget invests $98 million to expand the number of public magnet schools, which is important because when you look at black students who excel K through 12 or at least K through 6, most of the time the where our black children shine the most is in magnet schools because they basically have more of an intimate kind of one-on-one with teachers, smaller classrooms, more community-based communal kind of education. Kids sit in a circle, right? um, which offers specialized curricula and instructional programming. In addition, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act expands school choice by enabling families to use 529 savings plans to pay for private school tuition and homeschooling costs. Okay, so it's the first time in the history of America where you've had this much money being put into education, and it's also the first time in the history of America where you've actually had it to where you can actually choose between homeschooling, digital schooling, or sending your school to whatever school that they want on government subsidy. So that is the one silver lining about that entire budget.
And the only one.
Yeah, it's the only. It's really the only.
The only one.
Yeah, everything else is pretty bleak because I could go down to the Department of Labor. Talking about the Department of Labor uh, developing a plan to reorganize and consolidate the nation's workforce development programs. So, in other words, if you want a job, you know, you have to go through a workforce center that is basically um, validated by the federal government. The federal government has more than 40 workforce development programs spread across 14 agencies, um, with a total annual cost of approximately $17 billion. Despite changes in the recent reauthorization of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the system remains fragmented at the federal level, perpetuating unnecessary bureaucracy and and complicating state and local efforts to meet the comprehensive needs of Americans seeking workforce related services. The secretaries of labor and education who administer most of the programs are working a comprehensive plan to consolidate and reorganize federal workforce development programs to ensure that American workers receive the highest quality services possible and prepared to fill the high growth jobs of today and tomorrow. The plan will be released as part of spring 2018 government reorganization package, and what that entails is that the workforce of tomorrow is going to basically employ most people that are skilled in like IT, and so the government's trying to ramp up this thing where they train all these people for the tech revolution, right? So um, most people are used to labor, service, or some of that level. Right now, we have a very low percentage of the population that are skilled in IT development, app development, um, programming, and cybersecurity. They're actually ramping up that they're actually going to be ramping up that number, and so but there's going to still be a lot of people that are going to be lost out on jobs because again the jobs aren't coming back, and the ones that they need now are not the ones that they currently have, which is why they're doing a complete overhaul of that program.
That's crazy. That's wild.
So is there any other questions?
I'm just looking at the chat and listening to what you were saying at the same time, to see if anybody here had any questions, but the chat was moving kind of fast.
Yeah. Oh, another thing, Department of Agriculture. Department of Agriculture getting a huge portion of the budget. Budget request $19 billion for the USDA. Um, so they're actually going to be getting like $3.7 billion a year. It's like $4 billion a year. Yeah.
And mind you, this is all happening while the U.S. is in an extreme amount of debt.
Hmm.
Like we're talking trillions of dollars in debt, and they're spending this kind of money.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're trying to ramp up uh, alternative alternative agriculture, right? Like they are going to make grants available uh, to people that want to like grow their own food. Um, so if you want to have a collective, you want to have like a cooperative.
Hmm.
They're actually making grants available for you to actually do that. Um, the problem is that right now, about 80% of all of these grants are actually denied. They have been denied, and that's mostly due to basically Monsanto cornering the market.
Hmm.
Um, but it says USDA works to expand agricultural productivity and rural prosperity through the development of innovative practices and research by improving access to technology and by providing financing needed to help grow job prospects, raise income levels, and improve housing, utilities, and community infrastructure in rural America. So they're trying to bring back the co-op kind of thing, where you know how co-op work, where everybody kind of like profit shares.
Yeah.
Everyone that's involved in the co-op, they basically get a share of the profits from that co-op. And so America actually, by giving all of these uh, grants and federal money, public money, taxpayer money to corporations like Monsanto, right? Um, which they really been given a lot. I mean, Monsanto's getting $30 billion here, $50 billion here, in 1 year. Hell, Barack Obama gave like $27 billion to Monsanto. Okay, um, this they're actually opening up the grant program because they want more um, the people within general population, not really like big corporations. They want people to get involved with agriculture because there's always a shortage in agriculture, and that's wholly been due to privatization of agriculture. And now they're trying to deprivatize it by making these grants available to the public, people who are interested in agriculture.
Mm.
So America realized that it fucked up by uh, privatizing every damn thing, and now they're trying to roll back the clocks, so to speak. Yep,
Okay.
BGS actually wrote it in the chat. That's right, worker co-ops and the fourth industrial revolution. And I mean, this is what this is all about.
Okay. It's somebody in the chat. Nicole Johnson. They've been leaving this comment for like throughout the entire chat, and they must really want me to speak on this. And I know what she's talking about. Um, there's this woman. Her name is Abigail Disney. The last name speaks for itself. And she is an heiress to the Disney empire. And she basically did this video where she was explaining where the 1% gets this money from, because she gets like this money like every single year. And you probably know what I'm talking about, like the money that they receive, like the top 1% elite get every year. But she was saying how she doesn't need that money. Clearly she wouldn't need that money because Disney is like a conglomerate, and basically telling them where that money is actually going. But she's basically saying that she doesn't need it, but they give it to her anyway. It is money that they don't need. It's money that could actually be given to people who actually need it. But that's not so surprising. It's nothing new.
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, Nick Hanauer, who is an American venture capitalist, He actually talks about this at length, in which corporations use taxpayer money uh, to basically create, sustain, and expand their corporations. And then in return, what happens is they speculate on the cost of goods, services, and labor. And the way they do that is because it's a capitalist, it's kind of the capitalist marker, right? To always go for the lowest possible production cost, which means you need the lowest possible worker.
Mm-hmm.
They use taxpayer money to build the corporation, pay people low wages. Uh, the wages are so low that people still qualify for state assistance. So whenever people use these fallacies like welfare is destroying America, yeah, welfare is destroying America. Corporate welfare is destroying America. So, because if you really lived in a free market, corporations would not be held up by government funding, would not be held up by taxpayer money. They would not allow taxpayer money to basically uh, create a privately owned corporation. That's not a free market. That's a socialist market. That's a fascist market. What you are actually living in is corporate fascism. And then how do the corporate fascists remain in power? By telling you that anything that you get from the government that you basically pay for as far as taxes is a handout. That's how they run the scheme. That's how they run the scam on you. That's why there's not a single so-called capitalist right now. And Nick Hanauer would agree with me. Noam Chomsky would agree with me. There is no current person that supports either Republican, conservative, or libertarian as far as views or politics that is telling you the truth about welfare or a welfare state. All of that is a myth. All of that is a lie. The only welfare state that exists is one in which private corporations, private multinational corporations, which is the dumbest thing ever because they have no loyalty or incentive to make sure that Americans are straight first. So what do? They use that taxpayer money and then they export the damn jobs out of the country, which is what has been happening, which is why you see this budget breaking out like this. And this is the main reason why you see the opioid epidemic as bad as it is because you've been living in corporate fascism and it's been hiding its ugly head until now.
I remember when they first announced that they were the face of at that time it was just heroin. They didn't say opioids, it was just heroin. And that was back in 2016. It's amazing how far it has come to almost 3 years later.
Yeah, now it's all running rearing its ugly head. All of the lies are being exposed. In fact, you read this budget, it's all of the lies of the last of the last like 8 decades are basically coming to the forefront because they can't. They can't keep up the facade anymore.
Hmm.
I mean,
Looks like technology did them in.
yeah, you've been living under like a multinational corporate fascism. Um, some people call it globalist. It's very much globalist, but it's talking about multinational corporation, corporate fascism. That's basically what we've been living in, and this is what's been basically destroying the country. Like the United States has been a snake eating its own tail for a very long time, and now the snake has basically run out of tail to eat.
It's practically up to its neck.
The least significant part of this budget is in the Department of Education, and that's for the HBCUs. HBCUs over the next 5 years is going to get $1.1 billion. It's like $1.2 billion.
that they'll have to split amongst each other.
that they'll have to split amongst how many HBCUs do we have?
Mm, it's not many compared to PWIs.
I mean, when you break it down, I mean, when you break it down, it's like $1.2 billion.
Hmm.
Um, how many HBCUs are there? Let's look that up. How many HBCUs are there? So there's 101 HBCUs.
Okay, well in that case, I take back what I just said. I'm not even gonna lie, I didn't realize it was that many.
Yeah, well, actually, my bad. There's like actually there's 120 or something like that. Uh, 121 HBCUs. Six of them are private. Uh, see, six of them are private, and
I think mine is the one I went to was one of the six that was private.
yeah, there's six of them that are private. There's like another 14 of them that are basically held up, uh, are basically owned by the government. The other ones are, the longer running HBCUs, um, like Howard, Grambling, and all that.
Hmm.
Um, they have to share like $1.2 billion.
They gonna be getting it's gonna be a small slice of the pie per
Yeah,
per
actually, Code
school.
Ref sees Code Ref actually put it in the chat. 115 public black HBCUs and six private that all got to share like $1.2 billion.
Yeah, they gonna be fighting over that money.
Yeah, and they're requesting another like $2.4 billion over the next like 5 years. So that's the most insignificant part of this fiscal year budget.
Ironically, it would be the part about education.
Yeah, yeah. So really, where our strong suit, um, as far as education goes, uh, get involved. The flip classrooms. Get involved with the, digital education. Don't be afraid of digital education. They're actually going to they're what by what this is saying, they're going to completely phase out public education. The only schools that are going to be charter, going to be private, are going to be some kind of flip classroom, or there's going to be some kind of online school.
I see Cole Ref had said something in the chat. He said Howard is public, but it gets decent private endowments. And I think the reason why that is because a lot of notable people went to Howard. So you got to think a lot of celebrities who are millionaires now donate to that school. That's why Howard has become what you can say. Howard is like the Harvard of HBCUs. As far as when people mention HBCUs, Howard is like always at the top of that list. It is mainly because of the people who went there, the prominent people who went there. Like I
Yeah,
said,
as a matter of fact,
a lot of notable figures went to Howard, came out of Howard.
yeah, as a matter of fact, I'll actually read what it says about HBCUs. Um, Improves grant making and maintains support for minority serving institutions and historically black colleges and universities. I shit you not, that racially insensitive term is actually in there. The budget maintains important investments to support improvements in academic quality, institutional management, and capacity, infrastructure, and student support services for MSIs and HBCUs. In particular, the budget proposes to improve grant making by consolidating six MSI programs into $147.9 million formula grant, providing funds more institutions can count on in yielding program management efficiencies. The budget continues to recognize the extraordinary contributions of HBCUs and request more than $642 million to support HBCU focused programs that strengthen their capacity to provide the highest quality education. Um, Now there's another $550 million state formula grant for HBCUs. When you add up the 642 million, which is the initial payment into the program, the 550 million ends up coming out to 1.2 billion dollars in total support for HBCUs.
That's a lot of money. But when they got to
Yeah.
split it up like that, when you got to split it up like that, it's really not going to be that much.
Well, when you break it down and when you break it down by HBCU to HBCU, 1.2 billion divided by 100 is what?
Not much.
I mean, 1/10 of that, right? 1/10 of that is 100 million, and then you have 100 of them, so you're talking about um, literally 1%. So you look at it, each HBCU gets what, like 10 million.
That's not a lot. Because then once they get each school gets theirs, then they got to split it up between the departments.
And they got 10, 10,
And we
10
already
million.
know, and we already know STEM is going to get the most of the money.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the things that they're working on. That's why the Army, um, the U.S. military, is getting $2.4 trillion, biggest in history, biggest portion of GDP in history. Okay, $2.4 trillion, and 1 trillion of that is going just to the Army. Why? Because the Army is going to be the world leader in basically STEM. Is going to be America's leader in STEM. The U.S. Army is.
Hmm.
The U.S. military is getting 2.4 trillion. The Army is literally getting more than the Navy.
And that's trillion with a T.
Yeah, they're getting $1 trillion. America's getting one. The U.S. Army is getting $1 trillion to produce STEM. Uh, people that are proficient in STEM.
Now y'all see why I wanted to have this discussion tonight. I told you it's a lot.
Which I thought that was you know, uh, as you know, the mental illness treatment, all of that is going to be going away. They're basically um, they're saying improving. One of the line items is improving treatment for serious mental illness. They're taking away focus. I don't really know what the how they classify what is a serious mental illness versus what's a not so serious mental illness, because I was
Basically,
always from
I
the
can clarify that up right there. Basically, anytime a white person does something crazy, did you know they get labeled that mentally ill real fast? Of course, it's still very broad because they'll never break down what the mental illness actually is because
yeah,
they don't because there isn't one there.
yeah, that's true. So I don't know what there, it's ambiguous as how they describe serious mental illness, but it looks like Trump has basically cut all of the programs for treating mental illness to focus on only serious mental illnesses. And I'm going to put a quotes. I'm going to put that in quotations and an asterisk next to it, because that's ambiguous. I mean, it's so ambiguous. I'll just read what it says as far as ambiguity goes. It says the budget requests new investments to improve treatment for individuals suffering from serious quote unquote mental illness. Approximately 35% of more than 10 million adults in the United States that suffer from serious mental illness. So, so if there's 10 million adults, 35% of that 3.5 million they consider serious suffering serious mental illness, right? Um, who did not receive mental health services in the past year. The budget requests new investments to ensure more adults with serious, quote unquote, mental illness to receive assertive community treatment and evidence based practice that provides a comprehensive array of services to reduce costly hospitalizations. The budget also increases funding to improve mental health services for seriously, quote unquote, yet again, mentally ill individuals who are involved with the criminal justice system. The budget maintains funding for the Community Mental Health Services Block Grant, which requires states to support services for first episode psychosis, which is vitally important to ensuring that individuals with serious this it's like they're using serious mental illness like a dog whistle in that entire line item.
Hmm.
Um, and so when you talk about psychosis, like literally, and because the theme of the entire budget is focused on combating the opioid epidemic, my guess is they're looking at if they're white, if they're homeless, and if they're opioid addicted. That's what I'm guessing the serious mental illness is all about.
I
That's
would,
why
I
we
would not be surprised in the least bit if they try to claim that them being on them opioids would be a mental illness. They would be slick enough to pull something like that.
but as far as like jobs go, okay, black folk, if you have a degree in counseling, if you have a degree in psychology, or even if you have a degree in psychiatry, look, right now is the time to hop on these programs because they are going to be hiring counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists to manage that $5 billion in new resources, which includes human resources and otherwise.
Hmm.
Behavioral, Will 33, behavioral science. Got a degree in behavioral sciences? Yes. You're going to be, if you have a degree in that, you're going to be a part of those resources that they're going to be looking for to combat this opioid epidemic. In fact, I actually suggest if you're in college right now, you better switch all of your majors and your minors into some kind of behavioral science, psychology, psychiatry kind of degree. Jump into that. You want to be able to monopolize that entire field. So that entire $5 billion budget of new resources ends up going to you. You end up becoming the managers for these white opioid you know crackheads.
Imagine that.
And they're getting that $5 billion over the next 5 years. That's just in resources. Again, another $5 billion in human resources, which is what the DHHR is about hiring. They're getting rid of another 100,000 civil service jobs, um, especially those that have to do with finance. So if you currently uh, get like SNAP benefits, TANF, or any of that, all of that's going to be managed by a machine. Uh, is going to do the call in, kind of like the call in line. It's going to be completely automated. So if you work at the Department of Health and Human Resources in your locale, there is unemployment in your very near future. Yeah, $1 billion a year. Yeah, I'm telling you, BGS is all to go get. Yeah, all you black women, you're more educated. You got the highest level of education in the black community. Black woman, there's more psych degrees. There's more you got more MAs, BAs, BSs, MSs, MSTs, and then what have you. And anybody, you could be getting in on that budget money to manage those opioid addicted, junkies.
Could you imagine you getting in on that those funds and you bringing that back to the community and the community grows off of their pain?
It'd be
I mean,
it's poetic justice, right?
it's the American way because that's what they've been doing to us for decades.
Yeah, the you know, look, I'm not into this discouraging anyone, um, but but I mean, let's just look at it realistically. This is not about alienating one group of black people against another group, but we have to work with the army that we have, not the one that we wish for. And black women are integral to this process. You have more psych degrees, you have more gender studies degrees, you have more uh, everything degrees than of any demographic. Okay, this is where you need to be focused at. Is in mental illness. Because that's what they're focusing a lot of the stuff on. They're stripping away mental illness for what they call not so serious and focusing only on serious, which literally means white, homeless, and opioid addicted.
I swear that code speak is something else. And this budget is filled with a lot of code speak. Lee Atwater taught us this back in 1984.
Oh yeah, and so that pretty much covers the budget. Oh, I forgot the urban housing and urban development HUD.
Oh God, you talking about Ben Carson's area where he should not be at.
Yeah. HUD is going to be getting 39.2 billion dollars in gross discretionary funding for HUD. Um, that's $8 billion. That's $8.8 billion higher than last year. That's $16 billion higher than the last year Obama was in office.
Hmm.
Rental assist. I'll skip down to the rental assistance reforms and rental assistance. The budget requests $33.8 billion across HUD's rental assistance programs. In other words, public housing, a decrease of 11.2% relative to the 2017 enacted level. To address the increasing unsustainable federal costs of rental assistance, the budget requests legislative reforms that would produce significant cost savings. In addition to these reforms, the budget proposes program specific savings in the housing voucher and public housing programs. The budget does not request funding for public housing capital fund, as the provision for affordable housing should be the responsibility uh, should be a responsibility more fully shared with state and local governments. So, so yeah, it's going back to states' rights. So, in other words, they're going to give this federal money to the states, and then the states can use these grants and federal money based on their own discretion. In other words, the states are allowed to discriminate. And of course, what the theme of the 2019 budget is: to combat the opioid crisis. Again, this entire budget is filled with race specific approaches to the next you know year. In other words, they're giving federal money to the states for these programs. um, they're decreasing public housing, but they're encouraging um, other assistance programs to be used as a kind of discretionary to the state, so they could use these things at their own discretion. They could discriminate against whoever they want. So, in other words, who is going to get priority? The people that are going to get priority are people who are once again white, homeless, and opioid addicted. All of this thing, this is like a this is like full spectrum revitalization and combat against the opioid crisis. This is what you're seeing in this budget.
So that's basically what they want. That's basically what they're trying to combat is that opioid plague because it's affecting them. I wonder what that budget looked like back when it was crack. Probably just a mention of it here and there, and that was about it. If they mentioned it at all.
Well, actually, you could go back to the entire like 14 years over the course of the crack epidemic. There, there was never a subsidy specifically made for the crack epidemic. There was no kind of subsidies. There was no kind of provisions made in any U.S. budget for the crack epidemic. It's not mentioned a single time, and you can go over that 190-page document that basically goes through from 2002 to 2018 fiscal years, and it highlights all of the major reforms. You'll never see a single thing mentioning anything to combat the crack epidemic.
Now you see why I say I feel absolutely nothing. Like that, the birth of me using that term came from that. It's transcended since then, but I mean, that's where it was rooted at. I mean, like if they didn't care about what was happening to us, why should I care about what's happening to them? And I don't know how many times I got to see one of those PSAs where they got that sad, somber music playing in the background talking about them being addicted. Like I care.
Now another thing is another thing that's a part of this bill, and I have mixed views on it. Um, they're going to be they're actually locking down on immigration enforcement, but they're also ramping up so-called violent gang and gun crime reduction.
Hmm. Basically, anything that would have been used against us, they're trying to use it for their benefit to help them out.
Oh yeah, they have the burn justice assistance programs, basically, which provide state and local governments with federal funding to prevent and control crime. These resources. This is the other reason why, uh, and our esteemed officer Charles L. Faulkner will agree with me. This is the reason why we want to push black men, 100,000 of them every single year, into the police because $330 million to basically expand police forces. So your power really isn't at voting. Okay, um, right now when it comes to voting, what black people need to be doing right now is actually withholding the vote. This is about power. So right now is the time for you to push into these institutions. Um, you look at these budgets, see where the money is going because you always got to follow the money to see where you need to be. And every single year, I think this should be a curriculum where you go over the U.S. federal budget uh, with your kids, with your teens, so you can see where the money is going. Because where the money is going, that's exactly where you need to be pushing your kids into. So if they're going into immigration, they're going if they're putting money into immigration enforcement. Guess what? You got a 17, 18-year old. Well, you need to push them. You need to push them to go for some ICE. Okay. See, that's the reality. This type of stuff is important. This is the stuff that is constantly being overlooked. Um, 70 million. These are $70 million over the next year. What are they trying to do? Logistics programs. What is the logistics programs going to do? Is for support of domestic and foreign security. And so if so that's this is what I'm saying. Like warfare is always multi-generational. It is not a thing that you do one year and then you dust your hands off. It is a multi-generational process. Okay. Uh, Look at these budgets, see where the money is going. Use that information to determine where you need to push your people into. This is why, even our esteemed colleague, Officer Panthro, would agree with me. This is why pushing the boys into fields that basically fit their needs. Men are already naturally predisposed to opposing environment. That's why I said the military, the police, the fire department, those are pertinent. Why? Because even in this bill, three of the places that are always going to be secure is going to be military, which is getting $2.4 trillion. U.S. Army is getting $1 trillion of that to provide STEM based professionals. Okay, police are getting $333 million a year, not over the course of any years, but that's just in 2019 alone to train new police officers. They're getting another 25 million just to train new ICE officers, immigration enforcement officers. $148 million to train logistics and support officers, especially those in transportation. Okay, that's what they do. This is how that works. So if you currently already have, say, a BA or MBA in logistics, guess where you need to be. You need to be on that program. That's why I sent our esteemed colleague. He joined us on the BGS panel one night, Christopher Klepper. That's why I sent them the information to the UN. UN's hiring logistics officers right now. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is a very stringent and strict kind of guidelines that they have for qualifying. Um, but you can get in there, and when you get in there, that's actually a six-figure job. Now, when it comes to law enforcement, who's getting the biggest portion of the budget? There's two specific line items on that budget. That's especially when it um, comes down to security and all that, and that is with the prosecutorial support and prison. Basically the Bureau of Prisons that basically uh, control like all of your Department of Corrections and all of that. The Bureau of Prisons is getting $7.1 billion just for the year of 2019. U.S. states attorneys, they're getting $2.1 billion just for the year of 2019.
After hearing all this, I'm just curious to see what that 2021 going to be looking like.
Well, we know what the 2021-20, they've actually already been like hinting at it in the mainstream media. They've already been hinting at it in the mainstream media. How do we know? Because one of the talking points in the last year, one of the major talking points in the last year was a federal jobs guarantee program. Remember when they hinted back in March uh, about bringing jobs back may not be good enough, that we need a federal jobs guarantee and all of that kind of rhetoric? They
Yeah.
mentioned that in March. You haven't heard any of that rhetoric since then. They're ramping that up for 2020. That's my projection. That is my projection. And where are those jobs gonna go? They're trying to clean up the opioid junkie so that whenever they pass the federal jobs guarantee, Who's going to be ready to take those jobs?
My question
I
is,
mm,
my question is, how many of them do they think they can possibly clean up?
oh, they're not going to have to. They're not even going to have to worry about that. You're talking about a white male who is used to having everything in America, used to having every privilege in America, and then in the recent 2 3 years have basically fallen on his ass. Bathwater has gotten cold, which is why you've seen Charlottesville happen. Was because when you're used to having hot water in the bathtub and suddenly it's lukewarm,
Hmm.
okay, that, of course, that's going to make you angry if you've been sitting in hot bath water all of your life.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
Because now you're going to think that having hot bath water is a right. No, it is a privilege, and you've been benefiting. And white people, white males, have been benefiting from that privilege. And what happened? You have the fall of empire happening, which is basically encroached on that hot bath water, making it lukewarm. And now a lot of them just killing themselves because basically the corporate fascists have exported their jobs, and you're seeing a lot of these, especially southeast uh, southeast United States rural areas falling into Detroit style declines, which is what's making them kill themselves because they feel hopeless.
Shoot, if things don't go their way tomorrow, they probably gonna start that stuff off 24 hours from now.
That's what's going to happen. So they've already been hinting at the federal jobs guarantee. That is going to happen. I project that's almost guaranteed to happen in the 2020 fiscal year budget. And anybody actually can download um, the fiscal year 2019 budget. When you read it, you begin to understand it. Um, that this is where they're spending the money at. Because a lot of times, especially with black folk, we don't even know where the money's going. We're not following the money. And then what's happening, we're sending our kids to these schools, right? And they're focused on the wrong shit. They want to be a basket weaver, they want to be a violin player, they want to be this, want to be that, and there is no money being spent into any of those things. There is money being spent into things that America wants. That's where your kids needs to be to catch that money on the other side. Okay.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
I'm trying to see. I think someone had mentioned something about minimum wage, you know, going up or constantly going up.
Yes, yes, that's um, corporations. See, corporations are really they're really clever with playing the general public against itself. Okay, um, minimum wage has to be done away with. What we actually require is a living wage. Okay, what is a comprehensive living wage reform? Comprehensive living wage reform dictates that there be limits and caps put on executive pay. Corporate executive pay has to be capped. Minimum wage has been the greatest single killer of the American jobs market. I want you to remember that because capitalism unchecked is not good for anyone. It's not even, as a matter of fact, it's not even good for the corporations who constantly are looking for the lowest possible cost of labor. That's it's not good. It's not even good for corporations. It's not even good for anyone that wants to practice capitalism. Okay. Now the thing is, is capitalism always looking for the lowest possible cost of labor. You're always paying these low labor wages, right? What happens is you're trying to sell things in a retail store that the people who you're paying minimum wage to can't even afford, which means a drop in sales, which means eventually the business uh, uh, basically declines. And the next thing you know, just like Walmart, you have 100 and something stores closing all across the United States because you've decided to cannibalize yourself with minimum wage, paying these workers lower than living wage cost.
Mm-hmm.
And then in turn, they can't afford anything that you sell in Walmart. And now
And
the
they work
Walmart
there.
has, and then now Walmart has to close because of the loss of sales. It's hard as hell to keep a store as large as a Walmart open. Okay. Living wage puts a cap on corporate executives, puts an earning cap on corporate executives, where it dictates that the top paid corporate executive cannot make more than 15 times the lowest paid worker at their corporation.
Hmm.
That's comprehensive. What that does is that ensures that there always be a wide, expansive tax base with jobs overflowing, so that you never really run out of jobs, right? You never really run out of jobs that way. In fact, you could do a living wage law right now, and you could actually have people living the average median income across the country working 20 hours a week. You can actually America actually do that right now. And how it actually needs to be enforced is, okay, if you don't want to do business, then you don't have to do business in America. Walmart doesn't want to cooperate. Okay, I'm sure that Lowe's would love to have your stores. You don't want to cooperate. I'm sure that Target would love to have your stores. Okay, you don't want to cooperate. I'm sure that Whole Foods.
And
I'm not a big fan of Whole Foods, but I'm sure that Whole Foods would love to have your stores. Yeah.
if they don't want it, I'm very sure Amazon will want it because Amazon swallowed up Toys R Us and Whole Foods. Well they got shares with with Whole Foods now, so they now got into the food delivery thing through Whole Foods.
Yeah, we gotta get out of this thing where we tell black people to stay away from a lot of these government institutions. You cannot fight a system of white supremacy outside of the boundaries of white supremacy. Like literally, when you're on the outskirts, you're not a part of the governmental institution, so you don't know how they work, but they're constantly imposing upon you. Your back is against the wall. You don't have a country that you can run to whenever you get tired of America. And so the idea is, you look at the nine spheres of human activity, okay, and monopolize those spheres, those towers that I call them in the battlefield strategy video. If you can't destroy the tower, then you take the tower, monopolize the tower, become the dominant force within the tower, hold the doors open for troops that follow behind you, push into the management system, push into the management systems, and drive your competitive groups out simply by becoming the dominant population within that sphere of influence. Whether it be politics, whether it be I mean, we'll start small. Local school board, the local school board. That way, whenever the Department of Education opens up its budget to give billion dollars, a black monopolized school board is going to get the majority of that state money, that state and federal money. And because they're trying to push everyone into this digital age to where there's nothing left but private schools, charter schools, and digital or online schools or flipped classrooms, those school boards will be all digital. They're getting away getting, getting, getting they're going to eventually do away with K through 12 brick and mortars,
Hmm.
uh, K through 12 public brick and mortars. You see, but you want your people on those boards so you could determine how the education is being administered. You see,
I actually remember doing an article. I think it was a couple months ago, maybe it was last month, talking about there's an increase in homeschooling amongst Black people who, like in the hundreds of thousands. It's like it's increasing mainly because of the environment of the public schools and because of the lack of the proper education that they're getting. Because let's be real here, a lot of the stuff that they teaching our kids is not facts. It's like it's a lot of fabrication. I'll say that.
yeah, because they what they did was back in 2011. Back in 2011, there was this major push, and we can't blame anybody else but Obama for this. Open up the education budget to produce new books. New books filled with revisionist history,
Yeah, like McGraw Hill.
like McGraw Hill,
I'll never
telling you
forget.
that slaves were immigrants.
Right. That's exactly what I was ready to say. Yeah, I remember when I saw that, and then they try to act like they would, like it was no problem with it. But let a Black person create a book fabricating stuff about the Holocaust. Oh, all hell would break loose.
Yeah, and then you have to remember, because education since Title IX has been constantly defunded. Like every year, just chipping away at the education budget. Education budget is being chipped away at slowly over the last 4 decades, last 5 decades now, right? Um, you have that budget be taken away now. Your children really haven't been very well educated really since the 70s. Like the last great crop of students came on the heels of the boomer era, which is why like the boomers, the boomers are actually more well educated than say the Gen Xers were, because we kind of had we came up in the time of shitty schools
Hmm.
because education had been defunded. Last generation. That's the that's the main reason why so-called inner city schools, which is basically code speak for Black schools, have always been so shitty, because education was defunded as a result of Title IX. And so who was the last group of people to really get a solid education? Were the boomer generation. Gen Xers didn't get it. Gen Xers dealt with shitty schools, dealt with metal detectors in the schools.
Hmm.
If you had a metal
The
detector
bars
in
on the
your
windows.
bars on the windows, if you had bars on the windows and metal detectors in school, it's a sign that your school was a shitty school, because that they decided to put all of the money into crime prevention inside of the school than they did in the actual education.
And meanwhile, you had stuff like Columbine happening, and they didn't have no metal detectors or bars on the window.
Yeah, and then you want then people are wondering why are Black males dropping out of school during that Gen Xer era, is when you had the highest rate of dropout of Black boys, right? Well, well, a Black boy going to school every day and like he's got bars on the windows, got to walk through a metal detector like he's in jail. What?
And thus the school to prison pipeline was born. They figure
Why is
if
it?
we make it look like a jail and treat them like they're in jail, they'll get the hint and actually go to jail.
And it's so interesting. Like these are all this is all policy that has contributed the most to the decline of the Black community. Okay, in recent years, Title IX, one of the major contributors to the decline of the Black community. That involves schools, because Title IX is in all schools. Not only K through 12, but higher education. During the Gen Xer generation is when all this shit was passed. And why is it that, okay, before 1965, you had stable homes, you had stable families, you had stable community, you had your men were more sexually disciplined, you had women who were more sexually reserved. Next thing you know, Title IX comes into play, degrades the value of education, which has always been a pillar of the black community. Academic excellence has always been a pillar of the black community. But when you defund education, which means all the various programs that were kept inside of the schools, from shop class for the boys, home economics for the girls, sports programs for the boys, and then you also had a different type of sports programs for the girls. You know, you had volleyball, you had soccer for the girls, kind. That kept boys and girls active. When you take all of that shit out, the only thing that they have is curiosity, and that curiosity always leads them to one ultimate kind of discovery, which is always the discovery of their genitalia.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing you know, in comes in the late 70s, early 80s. Uh, you have the introduction of sex education. Sex education taught kids how to be sexually reckless by telling them that sex is fun, sex is all right, there's nothing wrong with sex as long as you use the condom. Sex education, understand, is something that should only be taught in the home, not in the damn school. You do
Right.
not you do not want your children going to school with some fucking weirdo telling them that it's okay to have sex as long as you use a condom, because all they're doing is teaching them how to be sexually irresponsible.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot trust a child with his own penis. You cannot trust a child with her own womb. This is why with the new education budget coming down, this actually puts education in your hands. And we cannot afford to sit on the ball for another generation. And they're talking about you got niggas over here, complaining about what black women are doing and this, that, and the third. Look, this is the time to get involved. We're in the era of involvement now. We're in the era of involvement. Cannot afford to sit on our asses another generation while shit continues to go all the way downhill.
Mm-hmm.
This is the time to grab power. This is not the time for you to be worried about who's voting for who. It's not the time for you to go on campaigns to tell people to vote for this, that, and the third, unless it's a local campaign. Okay. Now you want to go out there and vote, and you want to go to the voting booth and get your little stickers. Like how the kindergarten teacher would put a gold sticker on you back. I don't know how everyone's kindergarten went when the
And we
teacher
used to
would
put
put
on
a
your hand.
yeah, we'll put a little gold sticker on your shirt or on your head or something like that, right?
If you didn't get the sticker, you got a stamp.
And you got these goofballs walking around in MAGA hats talking about I voted.
Oh my God! Don't get me started with them.
You got people right now talking about, I'm going to vote. Who are you going to vote for come 2020? Man, fuck 2020. I'm looking at 2019 because this fiscal budget matters more than the fucking president.
I told people, I said this budget is more scarier than this election. Y'all think this election is spooky? I said this budget is spookier. It's terrifying.
Like you asked the average, yes, yeah, governorship elections, S Kiriki are very important. Understand, this is the person that all of the federal funding comes through, is the government, the governor of your locale, okay, of your state. The only elections that need to matter to black people right now are governor and below. That's literally how you even build federal representation. Okay. Now, once you get all of your once you get all of your pieces, all of your soldiers, your pawns, your knights in play, and what I mean by that is once you get your governor, your governor and your mayoral, um, your state school board, your state's attorneys, your sheriffs, the chief of police, and all of that. Okay, once you have all of those in play, then your congressional and senatorial votes, that's when they matter. But you need to be organized uh, because you don't want to be going to try to vote for somebody and they haven't even come to you, because that puts you in a place to where uh, now you gotta kind of wing it. Now
That's
you
why
want to be. Mhm.
I'm a huge like follower and supporter of Professor Black Truth, because he did a couple of videos talking about this. And as far as like black people, a lot of them go out there voting just to vote, or they hit you with the same, well, my ancestors died to vote, and all kinds of, the usual rhetoric. And he's basically saying, has have any of these politicians spoken to you, or spoken to your agenda? And it seems, and basically, he was also saying it seems that a lot of black people are scared to say that we have an agenda. This is what we want from you, and if you don't give it to us or work in our favor, then we're not going to vote for you. I'm like, is that so hard to do?
Matter
Because
of
all
fact,
these
that's
other communities, they have agendas.
as a matter of fact, at this point in time in history, that is actually the smartest, most intelligent way to use the vote. It is sometimes better to withhold the vote, force the candidate to come to you. Like, look, we want black specific. We want these things that are specific to our demographic. What is that demographic? The one that you put us in. That forced identitarian classification that we now know is black. We want these demands met. We want to end the mass incarceration. We actually want a pipeline for black police officers. They're like, oh, yes, we want a pipeline for black police officers, and you're going to make a federal grant to ensure that that happens, because we want police officers from our own communities. See, that's a real policy that can be put into play. However, with all of the rigmarole of mainstream media, it's got these Negroes hyped up to go and vote for somebody who doesn't give two shits about them. In fact, they could give a shit less if they had a negative.
As I kid you not, it's a sign that I pass every day that I before I went on my way to the gym, and the sign says, "Stop Trump and vote Democrat." I'm
That's
like,
the dumbest shit. That's the dumbest shit ever. Look. It doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. Okay,
mhm,
none of that matters. All policy is bipartisan. As a matter of fact, when you look at this budget, okay, you would think that this was all put out by a Republican, a Republican controlled Congress. Okay, but we know that's not true. Democrats still control the Congress. Why is there so much heavy focus on opioids when the opioid addiction is affecting mostly rural red states in a democratically controlled Congress? Understand, the Republicans currently have the executive seat, but Congress is still mostly blue.
hmm,
And these policies greatly disproportionately affect red states. Understand that. Republicans don't have any problem with that. Republicans don't have any problem with that. They vote for that because that's their constituency. Even though the Republicans have not done a damn thing for those red states in the last 4 decades, since that era of what they call the Southern Strategy.
mhm,
Okay, so all policy is bipartisan. The politics works like a hat. Okay, whoever is willing to meet your demands, that's whose hat you're wearing.
mhm.
Doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or a Republican. Look, we want this black law enforcement pipeline so that we can have more black police officers. And our intention is to put 100,000 black police officers in our communities by 2025.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it because you know they're gonna try it.
No, as a matter of fact, we'll say by 2020. We'll set the bar high. We'll say by 2020, and our intention is to train 100,000 young black men and women to be the police of our own communities. And you're going to make that happen. One of them gets to jibber jabbering with you, like, well, I don't know if that can happen. Well, I guess I'm taking your hat off today. What say you, Democrats? It's like, oh, I think we're willing to work with that. Oh, I guess we're wearing your hat today. Now we need you to sign off on this petition. We need you to endorse this petition so that we have our pipeline for black law enforcement and fire department. You don't want to sign off on it? Oh, I guess I'm taking your hat back off. I'll just keep my vote. And you can take your chances.
Hmm.
So I don't really care if you get the seat or not. Because this is about demands. Politics is quid pro quo. Black folks have been throwing away their votes and getting nothing in return. Everyone else gets something in return, something tangible.
Exactly, because they, like I said, they come with an agenda. And it's almost like black people are scared to come with an agenda because a lot of them have been shamed to say that they're looking for a handout. I'm like, that's what other communities are doing, getting their handout. They won't call it that, but that's basically what it is.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, we hell, we could create a petition right now. There's nothing stopping us right now from creating a petition. In fact, I think there's already a petition right now that's actually a response to this bill because a lot of the money that is going into next year's budget is to produce STEM professionals. Okay, and that's to really try to keep up with China. China has a million of these, millions, excuse me, of these STEM professionals. Black folk need to get in on that. Now, that budget is putting a lot of money into STEM, it's putting a lot of money into law enforcement. That's what we want our people to be. There's
Mhm.
nothing stopping us from having a petition right now, and I think there is one right now for a STEM pipeline for black folk. It's
And
not
one
getting it.
and
Yeah.
one thing I've noticed too is like whatever like kind of program that they've ever tried to keep black people out of, that's the one you probably want to look forward into getting into because it's a reason they're trying to keep you out. It's because they don't want you to really excel in that arena and probably go above them. I mean,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's pretty much all redlining was, to be honest.
Yeah, and it can't be like this over kind of spiritualized, sensationalized kind of demands, right? Like we want justice. No, fuck all that. I'll take my justice in the form of a managerial position. Okay, on the school board in the city attorney's office. Okay, as a district attorney, as the state's attorney. Okay, I'll look. I'll take my justice by putting my guy in the state's attorney's office. I want something tangible. Don't tell me to don't try to conflate my uh, my demands with some less intrinsic bullshit like justice
And
or
then
hope.
what they'll do is when you make those demands, they'll accuse you of being uppity. Okay, I'm like your little tactics and your little word shaming is not going to work on me. Try that Jedi mind trick with somebody else.
Like they always try to divert. Every time we want something tangible, they're always trying to divert our desires for having tangible things into to something that you can't even see, right? Like we just gotta hold on to hope. Yeah. Moni loves guys like that. Sounds like some Al Sharpton shit. Like, yeah, we just gotta hold on to hope. Man, fuck hope. I want a managerial position. Okay, fuck hope. Give me this goddamn STEM pipeline, and you got to vote. We don't even have any black architects. Look, you give me look. We need more mechanical and structural engineers so we can have more architects. Matter of fact, we want something. We want something better than that. We want a federal grant because we want our own urban housing and land developer, and you're gonna give us the grants to make that happen. You want this vote? That's the cost. Yes, give us what you're going to do is you're going to make it to where we're going to get $1 billion uh, in federal money to create our own black land and urban housing developer. We don't have any kind of infrastructure that we can use to help our people in their deepest time of need. I mean, you look at the condition of Flint, Michigan, still being poisoned, mind you.
And now New Jersey, because now they're
And now, yeah, now New Jersey.
their water supply is messed up now.
And so that's literally what we're fighting. We need those infrastructural controls. We need the to be able to manage that infrastructure. So when we have people that we can put our people into the places where we need them. We don't even have the ability to put our people in the places where we need them right now. That's a problem, and we can actually do that through politics. But what's happening? They start selling these niggas hope. They start selling these niggas. Just pray. Just we're gonna overcome and just look. Progress is not won by hope, prayers, dreams, wishes, or any of that shit. None of that plastic morality shit. Progress is won by tangibles, determination, and neck sweat. What we call sweat equity. That's how progress is won.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, you don't even have any microbiologists. You don't even have a lot of microbiologists. We will have a lot of people that are in medical science to be able to reverse some of the medical conditions that we actually have in the black community. You have black feminists running around here saying that black men are the second largest, second biggest threat to black women. Bullshit.
And
Black men don't even.
every time they bring something up like that, I'm like, can you please produce a tangible stat that backs that up? And I always get crickets with that.
Like bullshit. Black women's number one threat. Black women's number one threat is heart disease, my nigga. Look, there's people out here with, oh yeah, that's the other thing. No black preachers. That's another thing we could be supporting. See, politics is also about achieving outcomes through making enemies. Okay, um, how you make enemies? One, if you want to talk about like reparations, that's going to require you to make some international enemies like Israel, because right now Israel gets another type of welfare called foreign aid, and where you say, look, okay, you want my vote, and we want all of the money that you've been giving Israel. We want to put that into a local trust for our people, so we can use that money for our local businesses to revitalize the black business sector here domestically in the United States. We are a part of this fucking country, and we're not leaving. No fascism is going to drive us out. You're going to make this happen. You want my vote? You do that. Make an enemy of Israel. Israel is a welfare state being held up on taxpayer money that black people pay taxes to. We don't want them to get another fucking red cent of our money before you make this shit happen for us. And all of the money that you're giving them as far as foreign aid, we want that to be put into a domestic trust for descendants of slaves. So that when we want to open a business, we want to open a school, We want to open this a grocery store, what have you. There's money in a trust fund that is available for us to do that. Matter of fact, we have We Buy Black, which is a black online retail store. You can bring that brick and mortar store with just the enemies that you make of Israel by telling them we want Israel's foreign aid budget to be put into a domestic trust for DOS, American DOS. Another thing you could do, okay, you don't want to do that. We want to tax the church. We want to tax the black church. All of this money, $300 billion going into the black church, has been going in through the black church since 1986, and that's only what's been accounted. 300 billion since 1986. From 1986 to 2012, $300 billion have funneled through the church, and that's just what's been accounted for. Not even That's not even including what's probably been taken off of the top, because we know pastors love to take shit off the top, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Especially the ones with the mega churches. They scrape a few. They scrape a scoop off the top.
That's it. There, like,
Remember Creflo Dollar?
oh, they love. Oh yeah, they love taking shit off the top. I mean, shit, they would go off the top of their head with the bullshit.
Remember Creflo Dollar in his jet? People actually donated to that when he could have bought it himself.
Yeah, had the money to buy themselves, and but they go off they skim off the top all the time. I mean, they even skim off the top with the rhetoric. That's why you got them talking in tongues every other every other go around. It was like you stealing from God when you withhold your tithes and offerings. Shamana shamana sha. Like nigga, look, we're taxing the church because we're tired of the damn money to be funneling through the damn church and nothing comes out.
You know how empty that church will be after you start to tax them?
Oh, when you tax them, that's the whole idea. That's that's the whole idea is you want to get rid of the church's support. You want to get them off of the damn pews and into the damn community.
Mm-hmm. It's a shame that you got all these black churches and then the community looks shitty.
But the church is the only thing in the hood looking good.
Exactly. Like it's like it looks nice, and then right across the street, it's like okay, it looks like it's about to be newly gentrified.
How you think all of these these major black churches, um, like Creflo Dollars, like TD Jakes, even like Eddie Long,
Oh.
After, yeah, Eddie Long. How you think all of their churches ended up in white communities? There used to be black communities that those churches were in.
Mm-hmm.
But the church is robbing the communities of their economic well-being, and as a result, yes, that's true. BGS church, black churches are corporate fascists because money goes in, nothing but hope comes out. Same way the corporations, money goes in and nothing but hope comes out, and say, we're gonna bring jobs back. Then the job been brought back since.
I'm like, do people not realize that y'all pass that collection plate around every Sunday? For some of them, they go to church multiple times, and we all know how they do it. But you pass that collection plate around so many times, and the money supposedly only goes to the church, but none of it goes to the community. And then you realize hardly any of it goes to the church except for a few dollars here and there. But then you'll see the pastor pull up in a brand new Bentley.
Oh, the true royal family. I see. What do I see in the near future? Um, Here's what I'll say. Right now, I would say don't count the millennials out. Um, One, you're living in the get the bag generation. There's some millennials out here that's getting the bag, baby. Okay, listen. Don't count them out because you have to remember, um, education was defunded on the end of the boomer era. And so, the end of the boomer era, you have 1980, if you graduated high school between like 1980 1985, that was really the last generation of solid education. Okay. um during the Gen Xer generation, we would have been graduating school in the the 90s, in the early 2000s. Okay. uh we dealt with the shitty schools. We dealt with all of the shitty schools. Okay. And that was a result of defunding education. That started picking back up with the millennials. Education started picking back up. It's not as solid as, say, the boomer generation, but it was better than the Gen Xer generation. Okay. So uh the education that the millennials have is actually better than what we had in the Gen Xers. Okay. But don't count them out. And it's also the generation in which they have been the highest. They have the highest level of competency for technology. They have the highest level of competency for technology. So you can't count them out. You have to remember, yes, they are still indoctrinated, but you're moving into a technological age where the millennials have the know-how to deal with a lot of this new tech. They know how to deal with the programming. They know how to deal with all of this other stuff.
Just imagine if, just imagine like I'm a millennial decided to create a class teaching people like maybe from the Gen X generation, like the beginning of the Gen X generation or the late baby boomer generation, just how to operate a cell phone, and they charge them maybe like say $100 uh per month to work an advanced cell phone that they don't know how to use. You know how much money they can make off of that, especially in today's age, especially with constantly smartphones are coming out left and right and adding new things and then wanting to learn so they can keep up with their grandkids. They can make a lot of money doing that. And that's just an example. And for all I know, that could actually be happening right now.
Yeah, it's like I said, we have to go to war with the army we have, not the army that we wish for. And right now you cannot really afford to count the millennials out, because they actually do, for the most part, have a better education than us Gen Xers. Okay. Like me, I graduated in '98. Hell, I was 17. Went straight from you know high school right into the military at 17.
I
Now
was
you
still in
have,
elementary school in '98.
and so you have so now you have like millennials. They're graduating. By the time they get out of high school, they know how to, do web design, HTML. They know how to work with Java. They, you know, things that we didn't have. You know, and so what I see for the near future is you're looking at a tech controlled, tech centered kind of society. It is going to become very dystopian. It is going to become very detached of human emotion and all of that. Um, you already living in a semi police state. That's actually going to become even more stringent as they're also, if you've been looking at the current times, they're lowering a lot of the regulations on drones and drone operations. You're gonna have shit being delivered to you, to your home by
Oh yeah,
drone.
yeah. Because like the drones at one point that was something that was just government operated. Now you can go into a store and buy a drone, but you gotta have a license to have it though.
And so um, that's what's gonna happen in the near future. Now, those drones and those various technologies, self driving, um, those are going to require operators, and the only people right now that have the most know-how in society, as far as black people, are black millennials. I mean, not black millennials exclusively, but millennials uh, almost exclusively uh, have gotten the educational know-how to operate those things, to program those things, to maintenance those things, which is where you see, especially according to this 2019 fiscal year budget, um, that's where the government is moving to. And
I,
so
I'll
that's,
give you, I'll do you one better. Who are, as far as on as YouTube is concerned, most of the people who do tech videos are millennials.
I mean, yeah,
I'm not gonna say all of them, but most of them are millennials. Like a lot of them are around my age, and I'm
right.
29.
So yeah, so right now, even though we know a lot of the kind of shortcomings of millennials and all of that, we there used to be a time where in every generation, uh, whenever there's like a new thing, right? Like there's a new, I wouldn't even say trend, but a new kind of social transformation where the next generation will always say, "Well, we're living in different times." Yeah, uh,
Mhm.
millennials actually can say that, but right, they can actually look you dead in your eyes like we're living in different times. When I look at this 2019 bill, we are living in different, very different times.
Mhm.
One where technology is going to rule the day, and you can't afford right now to alienate the millennials because the Z generation that is coming up is totally immersed in this stuff.
Oh yeah,
And
Generation Z was that like mid '90s?
mid, mid 90s, I think it was like 90 94. Don't quote me, but I think it's like 94 to 96. So they're totally immersed in they're completely immersed in this tech culture, digital culture. We have to change the way that we are looking at digital space. Digital space right now is every bit as good and profitable as real estate. Okay, you, the way I surmise, say online activity, is that digital space is every bit as good as real estate right now because you are living in a very advanced technological age.
The code
It-
ref, he said, but millennials don't do much coding, they just do trending tech. That's the point. Millennials live off of a trend. The key word you said was trending. People nowadays love a trend. So they're gonna flock to whatever their trend is. If that trend can get them paid, they're gonna go for it. Shoot, people from previous generations nowadays love a trend. I'm surprised that trend, that word trend alone is a trend. That's probably one of the most used words of this generation is trend, trendy, trending. It has like all these variations of that word that all go back to the same thing.
and yeah, so yeah, right now we really can't really afford to alienate the millennials. Um, they because if we don't really bring them in, so give them a sense of community and brotherhood, what you're going to have is you're going to have an alienated population, um, and then the Z generation is basically going to be lost.
Hmm.
And then at that point, we could just say that it's over. We just say that we're done.
You know what's so crazy, Cerulean? Because Generation Z, they started, you said like 96 or something like that to 2012. That means we are now in another generation now, and I don't even know what their name is.
Yeah, we in the generation of star children, the
That's what
laser
it's called.
children.
Yeah, like a new generation started in 2013. It's just like time is just flying by so fast.
Yeah, so yeah, the millennials, they may be disrespectful. They may be lazy in a lot of ways. They may, um, what we think is intellectual dishonesty. It's just the way that they learned was completely different from the way that we learned. Um, And so it is upon us to give them a sense of community, and things that they can pass on to the Z generation, and the ones that's coming up after them. Because I got great nephews that know more about tech, even at age 6, than me. Okay.
Hmm?
Hell yeah. And so if we don't give them a sense of community, we don't we don't erect this brotherhood between, especially black men, because organization always begins with the proper organization of men. We don't get a rein on this, it's going to be over. I mean, and we could just basically say it's lost. Let the assimilation process happen. Uh, let the admixture be complete, go through. 2/3 of black population will be gone anyway, and our foothold in America will be reduced from 13, 14% down to about 3 or 4.
Hmm. That's scary.
And that's what I see for the near future. That's if we continue this like kind of back and forth. We have to work with the environment, understanding the environment in order for you to conquer the environment. And so,
I didn't even realize we was on here this long. I'm saying them live streams, you be losing track of time. Yeah, but like Cerulean said, if you want to find the document that has the 2019 fiscal budget, I'm sure Google will be your friend. I think that would probably be the best place to go and see if you can find it because apparently it is a public document. It's not like it's a public. It's not like it's a private document and we snuck in somewhere and got it and said it was in a cabinet filed as confidential or private.
yeah, I
Because trust me, if it was, we wouldn't be talking about this on a live stream.
yeah. I mean, you're on Discord. I have the documents in front of me. I have it downloaded on the computer. Um, yeah, you can download a PDF. Matter of fact, the thing I'm going to upload this to my Patreon. Anyone could go to my Patreon for free. See any of the books that I put on there. Those are completely free. You don't have to be a Patreon to me to view those books. I'm actually gonna upload the budget, the 2019 fiscal year budget, to my Patreon, which will be accessible to for free. There's other books on there as well if you want to peruse any of those books. Books ranging from survival, hand-to-hand combat, prepping, uh, emergency first aid, real military manuals, manuals that combat medics use today, um, books on strategy, books on just about everything. You don't have to be a Patreon. Again, you don't have to be a Patreon to me um, to view those books. Those are all free books.
In your YouTube channel.
Oh, my YouTube channel, of course, is Cerulean Gray, Cerulean, Gray, Grey.
Well, Cerulean, I definitely appreciate you coming on to the platform to discuss this because it needed to be discussed, and I knew that you was definitely the person I could go to that could break this down. And I'm sure that the people in the chat definitely learned some stuff. The conversation. I was looking at the chat the whole time that we were talking. That's how I was able to see what people were saying and was able to respond to certain people. But I'm glad that they learned something. I know I did. That's why I said in the beginning that you were going to be doing most of the talking because you definitely hit on a lot of very crucial points that people can look out for, going into the next year. And of course, with every live stream, this goes right onto my channel right as soon as it's over. So if you didn't get a chance to watch it while it was live, you can always listen to the playback. And most definitely, if you can, share it with as many people as possible because you probably not going to hear this information from, at least not in this way, from anybody else.
Well, gratitude for the invite, esteemed brethren. Um, Gratitude for the chat for showing up.
I can't wait for you to do your live stream on your channel. Because I don't think you've done a live stream yet.
I haven't. It's kind of difficult for me. I doing a lot of other stuff, and then I mean it takes me like a week to get a standalone video complete.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
because I've actually seen you've been making your rounds lately. Like you've been on like a lot of panels
yeah.
lately. But that's a good thing though, because that means people admire your advice and they admire your opinion on a lot of things. So that's actually a very good
Oh, well, yeah. See, um, like yeah, I've been getting a lot of pushback for some of the appearances I've been on. Like uh, me,
You don't have to say any names.
yeah, it's gets complicated.
Yeah, you don't have to say any names. But I do like I do appreciate it too. And oh, shout out to you. I got your notification speaking of Patreon.
Uh,
I have responded to you as well.
well, yeah, I support a lot of different organizations around the United States, um, and I'm moving towards focusing a lot on the influencers, um, online influencers, because I think that's where, for the most part, we're finding ourselves in shortage.
Mhm,
The reason why you see a lot of organizing endeavors happening across the United States, as far as Black people go, but are too few and far in between, really is because of advertising. And so I
mhm,
want to get into supporting more online influencers who actually push these ideas. You have to remember to support your Black media, your
mhm,
alternative Black media is very important. You have to understand, must always have this in your mind that you have been in a war for a very long time. And right now, it's only been in our generation that we've really had the tools available to us to fight back
mhm,
and to establish ourselves amongst this war, so that you know what to do in this time of dire need. And so, influencers are very important. Um, like I said, on the online space, digital space is every bit as good as real estate right now, because they're not making any new land, but digital space is always expanding.
mhm.
And so, to control a sphere of influence, be able to get your opinions out to influence the malleable minds of the youth, who will somehow, uh, you know, trip over this YouTube video. Okay, they'll stumble over this YouTube video, see it, and learn something. Then they'll take that back into their everyday lives,
Mhm.
because it's about creating a viral meme. But you don't want the viral meme to be something that's trendy. You want it to be something that's educational. Uh, we as Black people, we already have enough trendy things that we follow. We actually need to break our people out of this trendy kind of mindset and put them into the functional.
Right. Yeah, I do appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we're gonna definitely have to do another discussion like this again. I think this is the first time I've ever done this type of discussion, whether it was a pre-recorded video or a live stream on my channel. And I definitely enjoyed the conversation. I can tell the people in the chat enjoyed it as well, just based on the feedback. But I'm gonna let you go because you probably have some stuff that you got to do. Who knows? You might be putting together another one of your masterpieces, another one of your remixes, hopefully.
I am. I am. So yeah, next couple of videos, um, because I just did Black devaluation. Um, Also had the Gray Faulkner plan in its totality. Mind you, the Gray Faulkner plan is called the Gray Faulkner plan, but it is not exclusively Cerulean Gray and Officer Faulkner's ideas. These are a collection of brothers because, again, organization begins with the proper organization of men. That means that we have to combine our finances, our intellect, and our sweat equity. And this Gray Faulkner plan is, I think, there's some I can be proud of, because this is an example of how to collectivize the intellect of black men. Um, so we talk about military, talk about police forces, fire departments. Actually, break down part of the Great Faulkner Plan in battlefield strategy. Battlefield strategy. We talk about the spheres of influence in their mission base, their mission focus. Working with the army that we have, we understand that with the black women have more money than black men simply because there are more black women than there are black men. So that puts them in the sphere of economics. That's one sphere of human activity. They're more educated than black men per capita, simply because there are more black women, and more black women are in education already. So that puts them in the educational sphere as well. Um, because putting a black face in front of a child, even if it's a black woman, is important because it does reduce, um, black dropout rates. Okay, um, when there's nobody in your child's school to relate to, there's a high probability that they'll drop out. You put a black face in front of them, uh, they lessen that chance because now you put somebody in front of them that they can relate to. So we want women to be push themselves and um, isolate, consolidate, and monopolize the educational sphere. See, um, black women overrepresented in politics, and so you actually transform your politics into a weapon. You're overrepresented in politics. A lot of black women are already in seats of very powerful political positions. Problem right now is the fact that they're in political positions. Um, they're scatterbrained about just about everything, and so they
And
need to
don't be
focus
like,
on.
and please do not be like Candace Owens.
Oh no, no, don't be Candace Owens. That whole Brexit shit. I just you ain't
Yeah,
want me
yeah,
get started on Brexit. Brexit Brexit
yeah. We can start
is
on that. We'll be here for almost another 30 minutes.
yeah. You don't want to be jumping on board with Candace Owens with that whole thing. That's Southern strategy in blackface. You don't want that. You don't want that. You,
All
you
right,
look,
well,
look. It's about political power. Okay, they talk all this crap about the Democratic Party. It doesn't matter about whether it's the Democratic Party or Republican Party, but it's about where your block is, right? So if your block is in the Democratic Party, that's completely fine. That's completely fine. But it is unintelligent and stupid to break your block uh, and separate off. And they use the dog whistle like, the get off the Democratic plantation. Why? So I could go fetch lemonade and butter biscuits for the Republicans? No, oh, don't do that. Um, Now, if most of your people were a part of the Republican Party, that's your block. So to separate off from the Democratic Party, or separate off from the Republican Party, to break your block down. Wherever your block is, that's where you want to be. You do not want to split off your collective political power. If your collective political power is in either party, that's where you want to be. Okay, and because we got to remember, votes only matter when they're one collective, and that's what gives them power from a collective vote. Two, it gives you more power when you withhold the vote and it's a collective vote. So, so yeah, you don't want to be hopping on board with Candace Owens and Brexit and all of that other Southern strategy politics and blackface. You definitely don't want to do that.
all right. Well, on that note, I'm gonna say good night to everybody because it's getting late, and I actually got to be up. Early. I actually got to be up early in the morning anyway. But like I said again, appreciate you, Cerulean, for being on. Appreciate
It's been
everybody
a
who was.
pleasure.
Appreciate everybody in the chat. I guess the next time we'll speak will probably be tomorrow, somewhere on probably on Angry Man's channel, talking about whatever he gonna talk about. And I know that's gonna be another interesting topic. But yeah, next time y'all see me, I'll have up another a video, but that won't go up tonight. I was gonna put it up tonight, but the show ended up going a little bit longer than I had expected. So I'll put another one up tomorrow. So on that
All
note,
right.
y'all,
So Salute to the nation.
Right.